2019 to order. Roll call.
Mayor Haynes is absent. Vice Mayor Wilkinson.
Present. That's me.
Commissioner Guthrie.
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Commissioner Beckley.
Always here.
Invocation this evening be given by Reverend Mark Summerfield, Family Life Center.
Shall we bow our hearts together in prayer? Father, we're thankful tonight that we can come to you and we can seek your wisdom and your guidance in our city government. We thank you tonight for the leaders in our city that are working so diligently for the better of this city. We pray your blessings upon them this evening. Give them wisdom and guidance, we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please stand for the call, pledge to allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, no proclamations and recognition, no personal appearances, public comments. Anyone wish to address the commission? Moving on, we have the consent agenda.
Ms. Vice Mayor, Tia and Rachel have applied to, well, let's see, Rachel is renewing her CTC application and Tia has applied to be a member of the CTC. However, if you would like, I can remove these. Molly was supposed to send me their applications so I could include them for you guys today, and she forgot to do that before she left. And so she must have been unable to do it from home because I called and I don't have them yet, so.
Have you seen them?
So we need to wait to approve.
I
You
have not
to,
seen
or-
them. Molly has them. I have not seen them yet. So it is up to you whether you would like to approve without having seen the application. Tia is the director of the Kansas Soil Museum, and Rachel is Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
Rachel's the Holiday Inn GM, I think. Manager, general manager, one
I
of
don't
those.
have a problem voting on them.
Do we have any trouble?
I don't have a problem voting on them. Sound like qualified candidates to me.
Those are both fill a few obligations that that committee needs too.
Yeah.
Tourism, so that's, I'd like to see them though out, I mean, whenever we get our hands on
As
it.
soon as she can get them to me, I'll just forward them to you.
I say we leave it on there.
Okay. So I need approval of the consent agenda.
I move that the consent agenda as presented be approved.
Second it.
Is there a second?
Greg did.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Same sign opposed? Motion passes. Okay, there is no old business, so we move to new business, which is an application to rezone 610 Southwest Purity Springs Road.
Yes, Vice Mayor and Commissioners, bring up a visual for you this evening so you can see the subject property. Before you tonight is an application to rezone 610 Southwest Purity Springs Road. It is the area within the yellow bordered parcel there. It is roughly 60 acres located on the west side of El Dorado. Its current zoning is agricultural residential. The applicant is requesting to rezone this property to light industrial. The planning commission voted to recommend approval of the rezoning 5-0. And I stand for any questions you may have on
I noticed in the planning commission, or maybe it was the application, they're going to do access off of Purity Springs.
that.
Is
Would
that
be,
like right there at the bottom of the bridge?
can you see my cursor? The access would be right here to the west. Purity Springs is following my cursor there, and that would be their access.
And then that goes on down to, Southwest
What
Ave-
is Southwest 10th Towanda Avenue, which then turns into 196 Purity Springs.
okay.
Are they moving their facility down there?
The applicant representative is here. If you have any direct questions about that, I'd ask that he come up.
Are you planning on moving your businesses down there? Is that what the idea is?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We're looking at having 2 different shop locations there. We incorporate 5 different businesses from that, so.
Right. Okay.
My name is Tom Pennycuff. I'm the controller with Berkeley Enterprises.
That's all I had.
Any other questions, Commissioner? I would accept,
Planning commission,
5-0. In reviewing this, you can see bounded to the north is all zoned light industrial. To the east, you have the El Dorado Business Park. North half is office institutional, south half is light industrial. You have agricultural residential to the south of the turnpike, so the turnpike serves as a buffer. You have 254 as a buffer to the north to a like use of light industrial. And then there is a residence to the west on Purity Springs Road. There was no one that made public comment at the public hearing in front of the Planning Commission. Everyone within the area was notified via letter, and Butler County has agreed that this follows their comprehensive plan and sees no reason to deny it.
is there a recommendation?
Ordinance number?
G 1297.
Madam Vice Mayor, I move to approve case number 19-01-REZ, requesting a rezoning of 610 Southwest Purity Springs Road to I-1 Light Industrial District, and that ordinance number G 1297 be approved.
I'll second it.
I hear a second.
Yes.
Roll call?
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Commissioner Badway?
yes.
Vice Mayor Wilkinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Guthrie?
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is zoning ordinance amendments.
Yes, we had an opportunity to discuss this at our work session last Wednesday. And this is the item the Planning Commission has been working on for a number of months. Somewhat some of the items directed by the City Commission back in the fall. You were seeing a lot of cases on accessory structures and asked the Planning Commission to take a little deeper look into that. And as well as there's some other items that came up along the process and some other general recommendations to changes to the zoning amendments. Got a little slide here this evening. I'll go through and just kind of talk on some of these subjects. We showed this quote to our Planning Commission because we thought it was important to remind them of the purpose. And in reviewing some of our old zoning regulations, we found this quote from Bruce Frinsberg, previous Secretary of the Planning Commission and City Engineer. And that statement there kind of gives them the mission and what staff and the City Commission and Planning Commission is tasked to do to look after property values and balance the rights between owners on each side of the fence. Tonight we're discussing these possible recommended updates to our zoning regulations. This first slide here is about residential accessory structures. You see to the left, the square footage, height, side setbacks. You'll see our current regulations. Today, you can build an accessory structure, so a garage, a shop on your residence, as long as it's for your personal use, up to 1,200 square feet maximum. And that can be larger by special use permit. The height currently can be 12 feet at the sidewall, and the side setback is 10% of the lot width. What you have before you tonight, after discussion amongst the planning commission over a number of meetings, is looking at a ratio for accessory structures. So a 1-to-1 ratio of the gross square footage of the principal structure, up to 1,200 square feet. They did want to consider allowing a 1-to-1 ratio up to 1,500 square feet if that owner was willing to set the structure back farther from the road. So instead of a normal front yard setback, set it back 60 foot from the property line and match the front facade of the accessory structure with the primary residential structure. And of course, allow larger by special use permit. The thing with the height was a struggle, was 12 foot at the sidewall. A lot of recreational vehicles were having difficult times getting openings to pull in there with that 12 feet at the sidewall. So what we're proposing is a peak no taller than the principal structure with a compatible slope of the principal structure. And side setbacks, this has to do, and I'll get into a little more detail later on, this has to do with older lots in town, smaller lots, where you have maybe an existing garage that is set right up on the property line, allowing some relaxation to those side yard setbacks to make it a little more feasible for something to be built there. Also, a topic they wanted to address was cargo containers for residential areas. Currently, we have no regulation on these. We're proposing is allowing them up for 60 days for construction and model moving purposes in residential areas, and to prohibit them as an accessory structure on a property. The next is infill housing. There is no current regulation proposed. Brought to you tonight is infill housing must be 75 to 125% of the gross floor area of the houses on that block. The purpose of that, maintaining the character and scale of the existing neighborhoods. And then as well,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, can you go back one? I'm sorry. On the infill,
Yes,
must be 75 to 125 of existing houses. Is that of an average?
of an average.
Of an average, so if there's 4 other houses on that block, you take all of them, add them up, divide by 4, and 75 to 125 of that number.
Yeah, and
Okay.
a little later on, I'll get to a slide where we took 3 blocks in town
Okay.
and measured each home, and so you guys can visualize that 75 to 125% to see what would fit within that block. And really, the reason for that, we've heard from both sides. We've heard from folks that have been neighboring properties where a very large structure has been built, where one prior didn't exist. And we have seen others where a smaller structure has been built than what previously existed. And it's all about looking after that, the property values in the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood and the scale. As well, you'll see a definition for what is a shipping container, defining the floor area, and a bylaw to add a zoning, planning commissioner to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and removal of the zoning annexation requirement. And what that is, currently in your regulations, if a property is annexed into the city limits, it automatically goes in as R1 low-density residential, which is the most restrictive. So we felt that since we have extraterritorial jurisdiction outside of our borders. Zoning now exists where prior it did not. I'll just jump this one. This will give you an idea of the side yard setbacks. So here we have some typical pre-1960 lots in El Dorado. You can see the home, the structure in yellow, and the garages in blue. A majority of these lots are, in the 50 to 60 foot range. This kind of gives you a street view of what those may look like. And today, with your current side yard setbacks, it is almost impossible to rebuild a garage or a structure there if damaged. So what is proposed to you by the Planning Commission is reducing that in lots built prior to lots platted prior to 1951 to 3 feet on a side yard setback. This map kind of generally gives you an idea when certain areas in town were platted. You can see the dates on there. A lot of our core of El Dorado is pre-1900s when it was platted. This will get into accessory structures. So there'll be 3 examples here. You can kind of visualize the accessory structures. With this, if this is applied to, if these recommendations are applied, you'll see this lot was platted in 1918. So they would be allowed to go as low as 3 foot on the side yard setback. Today, although it would not fit on this lot, they could build a 1,200 square foot accessory structure. But if the recommendations are applied, the maximum allowed would be 840 square feet, the same size of the home. And then to go larger, since they would not be able to accommodate the deeper front yard setback because of the narrow lot width, they would not be eligible for that provision. To give you an idea, the yellow dashed line there is the rear property of this lot. And in no scenario may any structure be built that takes up more than 50% of the rear yard. Here's a little, 1950s age, a typical lot width of 70 foot. You'll see the buildable area for an accessory structure on this. With the recommendations here, you see 1,048 square feet is the same as the size of the house. So they would be able to build an accessory structure of that size. If larger, they'd be able to go through a special use permit. And here is a much larger lot. You would see the buildable area for the accessory structure is contained within the yellow dashed line. This magenta line shows a 60-foot setback, so they would be eligible to build up to 1,500 square foot with a 60-foot front yard setback and matching the materials of the home.
When you say matching materials of the home, does that include roofing?
Yes. Here we get into the infill. And it's important, I'll leave on the accessory structure. They still wanted to leave the special use permit provision that anyone can come before the Planning Commission and then on to you guys with their proposed project. So if someone wanted to build a 2,500 square foot accessory structure and it fit within their property, within the current regulations, the Planning Commission thought it was still important to come to be able to have that avenue to present their special use to them and then on to you guys. So there is no restriction. There's always that ability for them to go for a special use permit. These next 3 slides get into the infill that we talked about. So this is a vacant lot that was previously developed in El Dorado was demolished, the home was demolished, and someone was proposing to rebuild. So this is where we get into protecting the scale and the character of the neighborhood. So as proposed to you tonight, that 75 to 125% average of the gross floor area, you will see the gross floor area of the houses within this block ranging from 1,680 square feet to 1,160 square feet as the smallest. So in the middle, you see the average, and then you see that lower end and top end, the 75 to 125% average of the gross floor area.
What street is this?
I can't remember.
You knew I'd ask, didn't you? Okay.
There is one on here I left the street name on, so, or Jay did. Here's a little small, little tighter knit block. Houses ranging from 744 square feet on up to 1,724 square feet. So you can see the ratios for this block. And then we wanted to get into an area where some of these smaller homes exist on a block, and you can see ranging from 624 square feet on up to 890 square feet. It would allow someone to rebuild by 574 square feet to 957 square feet.
Now, when you say you take the, what do you consider an area of home? Just the one block?
Just the one block. Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Both sides of the street or just?
Just the side it's on.
That's where that tiny home is going in right now, right?
Yes. So the planning commission had a lot of discussion about this, and I think what gave them some ultimate resolution in the idea was, if you have a unique circumstance, if you have something come up, say on this block, for example, someone buys 2 lots and demolishes both homes and wants to build an 1,800 square foot home. So he would still have that avenue to go after a variance and present his case to the Board of Zoning Appeals, who would then ultimately approve or deny the request. Same scenario for a home that, say on this block here, someone wanted to build a 400 square foot home. If they were able to, if they wanted to go in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals and advocate for their reasoning, they would have that avenue as well.
Now, is that before or after? So they wouldn't even go to the planning commission, they'd go straight to the Board of Zoning Appeals?
Yeah.
Site plan also defined gross area.
Yes, gross floor area as defined is all of the square footage above grade. So if it's a single story home, it's just that single story. If it's a 2-story home, it's a single story and the second story. We do not, in this language before you tonight, we do not include basement square footage.
Or porches, or,
Right, but if the garage is attached to the structure, that will be included in the gross square footage.
really? So attached garage is, really?
And really what that is the impact, the size of the structure. So getting that size, that impact of that structure in that block.
On the variance of going to the, is there because they don't meet very often, right?
They only meet when someone applies for,
When needed.
yes. And those meetings are just called at their availability,
Okay.
after a public hearing set.
Is there an alternate way to do that? To make it where they wouldn't have to go through that if multiple lots were put together? I mean, in my head, where I'm thinking is like Olive, like between Star and Gordy on Olive. You've got a neighborhood of small homes right there. Some of them are going down, talking about, someone goes in and buys 3 or 4 of them, wants to put 2 nice homes right there. I'm just trying to think, is there an alternate way of doing that rather than putting it in that realm where it's I don't know, I'm just curious, just trying to,
Yeah, and that was kind of discussed, and then when you looked at the ratio from, like on this one, 1,010 square feet to 1,683 square feet, there's a pretty wide range, and then going on to these others as well.
well, where I'm thinking is that one.
Yeah, so say these 2 lots were purchased and demolished, and someone wanted to build one larger structure there.
That's what do we feel that that would be the fastest way for that homeowner to get his variance?
Yes, because if you put in a provision for a special use permit, then there'd be the same notification, public hearing, but it'd go to the planning commission and then wait another month to come to you guys for final approval.
Okay, thank you.
So the square that you have highlighted, that's an empty lot, is it not?
No, there is a new home built there today. The structure was demolished and a new home rebuilt.
It's on South Taylor, what's the street over here?
And really, what we're trying to accomplish is not to pick exact locations in town, but to give you a range of larger homes in older areas, medium-sized and smaller.
But some of these lots that are plotted in El Dorado aren't necessarily all the same size on a block, are they?
They are not. No.
Which is why there's a range with the requirement. Instead of saying you're limited to this square footage, you have a range to work within, and then if you can't work within that range, then that's when you would have to go and get it.
Special permit.
Right,
A variance.
right.
How's that work on South High? Between High and what's the next, or Summit, where the houses are built in the alley? Okay, if they would go in there and they would take the houses out in the alley, they could not rebuild a home in the alley. Right? Or,
Well, I'm trying to Summit and High, I'm trying to visualize where you're at.
okay, I mean, just north of Penny, they got the houses in the alley. They're all built along inside on the alley.
And so, in that case, what I'm thinking is
So if they
there,
go in there and tore those houses down the alley, they couldn't go build another house in the alley. They would have to take the house from the street.
well, are you saying there's two
There's two
structures,
houses.
2 houses on each lot?
Right, if you go down there off of Park,
And so in that case, there is an accessory structure that's another use. It's kind of like an apartment structure on that zoning lot, that one lot. So to rebuild that, they would go in front of the planning commission and get a special use permit to have a second dwelling unit on their lot.
even though they're 2 different homes, it's on the one lot.
Well, it sounds like what you're describing is one lot. The owner owns that one lot, and then there's 2 homes, and he maybe rents out the rear one.
There's 6 homes right there. There's 3 homes in the alley and there's 3 homes on High Street.
As it is today, and there's grandfather situations all over, as it is today, R1 zoning, you're allowed 1 residential dwelling unit on that lot. Now, if there's an existing accessory apartment behind it, that's allowed to continue until it's demolished or no longer used as that, in that nature. And then if someone wants to rebuild a new apartment accessory behind the primary residential unit, they would come in front of the planning commission and ask for a special use permit.
But the change with this is that we don't, someone who owns that, does lose the building, wants to rebuild it, he can rebuild it because of you not having to be all the way back off the side of the property. Because it's what, 15 feet or 25 feet listed, but now it's 3 on an existing plotted.
Yeah,
Property.
side yards today are 10% of lot width. So, and that goes on down to 5 foot in some of your older neighborhoods. So, in the oldest neighborhoods in El Dorado, we're asking you to consider going from 5 to 3. But generally, it's 10% of lot width. So you have a 70-foot lot.
With a minimum of 5.
Yeah.
That's what it is now.
Right.
So basically, the bottom line is, it's all gonna depend on the lot available. Because even the lot may not be able to have a 574 square foot house built on it because of all the other offsets and whatever.
Well, generally, the lower you go in square footage, the more accommodating you're going to be able to fit anything on a lot. The larger you get, the wider you get.
Shotgun house.
Yes, the wider you get, the bigger you get, the harder it is to develop those smaller lots. If I can pull up here. In areas like this. So you can see that's an 840 square foot lot. And it darn near almost takes up every bit of the width on
Yeah,
that
there's no
lot.
breathing room with that
Right.
lot.
So what your provision protects on the other end of this, what is presented tonight protects on the other end of this, is someone, say that home is demolished and rebuilt, someone from building a 30-foot tall residential structure there and totally not fitting it within the neighborhood. Just kind of almost literally blocking out the sun from the neighbors.
I guess one of my concerns is making sure that we can still continue to have infills,
Sure.
because you are getting more lots available. As I drive around town, I see houses that have been demolished.
A number of them, and that is great, and one of our highest priorities is to see infill happen. It's the most economically feasible thing for us to do as a community, get people in, reinvesting in these neighborhoods. And so what the ultimate goal is to protect those adjacent property owners' rights and values and make something compatible be reconstructed there that fits within that neighborhood. So a protection.
So there's 2 motions here.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that,
Scott and David talked to me and said that there was concern regarding the section on infill housing sizes. And so they had asked if you could approve part of the ordinance and send the rest back, but it's cleaner if you do it this way. So I actually need to add a section onto the second one, but if you'd like to remove the infill housing sizes and and send that back to planning commission, you would approve the second ordinance. If you're okay with this as written,
It's the
then
top
you
one.
would say the first one.
okay, so if we're okay with all of it, we can just do the second one.
Do the first one.
Do the first one, top one.
Thought that's the one you just said you
Okay,
didn't want to do.
okay, gotcha. And
you
if we want
don't-
to send it back, then we do the
If
second
we
one.
don't like the infill regulations, what we were just discussing, they gave us an out to do everything else except for that part.
And I would add a portion on the end that said, and ask the planning commission to review the regulations on infill housing sizes.
Yeah, and if you go that route to kind of give them specifics you want them to look at or things you want to consider.
Well, as long as the builder has the possibility of doing a special use permit,
Or variance.
A variance.
a
Yeah,
variance, okay.
because,
A variance. As long as they have the opportunity to do that and go before the planning commission,
the Board of Zoning Appeals,
and then I think my concerns are probably taken care of.
And that's where I asked, is that what and it's the fastest way.
Yeah.
If there's no other, I mean, if there's a faster way to get that approved for that landowner, I wanna hear it. If not, I'm cool with this being, that's kind of where I'm at with it too.
the Planning Commission, even up until their last meeting, had a pretty lengthy discussion about what if someone comes in a block,
Right.
buys 2 lots, and then maybe is hoping to get another 2 lots and wants to build an 1,800 square foot house, but it doesn't fit. And that's a perfect reason for us to support a variance
Right.
and go through that process.
I think the builder is covered. What's the ordinance number?
G 1298.
I got a question.
Yes,
Back to the accessory structures.
yes.
On the matching materials again.
Uh-huh.
How is someone, if they put up an accessory structure and they put up a metal building, say their existing house has a brick wainscot on it, and they say, okay, I'm gonna do that. How is somebody gonna put a composition roof on a metal building?
And in that case.
Because to me, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but to me, I never thought facade meant roof. To me, a facade is
Just
The frontage.
the frontage, not the roof.
Okay. So, similar materials, I guess, couldn't it be reworded as, I mean, similar color? Like if
I
you
don't
had
have a
brown-
problem. Well, I
had
don't have a
brown
problem with similar materials, but, except for the roof.
roof. Right.
Most of those are gonna be tin.
On some, and then some will be stick-built with,
Yeah, there will,
Composition.
yeah, and there are stick-built accessory structures. I didn't want to restrict it, I guess, to that.
Right.
and what the intent was to give them kind of a bonus. So you could go, you're regulated to 1,200, you can go on up to 1,500 square feet just with staff's review if you do these things. If say you wanna do a tin building and you want it to be 1,500 square feet, then you go and ask for a special use permit.
So you'd have to go for a special use permit if you didn't want to do the compatible material part. If you wanted to
If you're over-
deviate from the ordinance anywhere, whether it be size, building material, whatever, you'd need a special use permit, correct?
If you're above that 1-to-1 ratio of your home,
Right.
or if you're above 1,200 square feet, if your home matches that 1,200 square feet. And if you can go up to 1,500 square feet if you have matching building materials with your home and you set it back 60 foot.
Okay, but if you didn't want, or for whatever reason, you didn't want to do one of those things,
It's
special use permit.
just like today. Yep,
Okay,
Just like today.
okay.
Why are we,
Scott, the way this reads, and portions of the structure visible from public property match the building materials of the principal structure. So if I'm, public property meaning public right of way, so if I can't see the roof from the street, would I have to comply with that regulation?
You know, I would say a majority you're gonna see from the
You're gonna see
streets.
the roof, yeah.
Um,
You're gonna see the roof from the street, you know, unless it's 20 foot. Well, unless, you know, the adjacent house is a 3-story house and this
And your
thing.
neighbors will see the roof. So a lot of what happens today, if you go over 1,200 square feet, you have a special use permit, you have a public hearing, all your neighbors are notified, and they come in.
Okay,
Right, but the regulation says from public property, not from my neighbor's backyard. So if from public property, there's trees blocking the roof, I mean, from what this says, it has to be from public property. So there may be circumstances where the rule may not apply based upon, I mean, it's bending, it is
no,
bending.
and I understand what you're saying, but I don't wanna sit there and pick it apart. I mean, to me, okay, if you're walking down the sidewalk or you're driving down the street and you can see the roof, to me, that's public property.
Sure, exactly.
And I can't think of too many residential structures in this town that you can't drive down the street and see the roof. So, I see, I just wanted it clarified for me,
Right.
I'm the dummy.
Yeah, they just wanted to give an avenue for someone that was willing to make it look like their home and set it back a little farther from the street, just to get it reviewed at staff level.
That's fine.
And if it's a metal building, and by no means a bias towards a metal building, but if it's something that doesn't match the home, then go do like we do today.
Go through the process and get a special use permit. Okay.
But if they change the roof of their house to metal, they wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, there are metal roofs on houses. Okay.
So would we be interpreting that as it match the building materials? Could it be like materials? I mean, I'm just looking at some of these houses where you may not be able to get the roofing materials that was put on a house in the 1950s, for example. I don't know much about roofs, but let's say there's a building material that is no longer available to
If you've
get.
got a roof that's been there since the 50s, that's a hell of a roof. As many hailstorms as we had.
And a lot of these, you know, if they fall within these rules, the zoning administrator is gonna have to make a determination. Does this follow the intent of the ordinance that was passed? Is this the intention of the planning commission and the city commission? Because we're not gonna have a true definition for every situation that occurs.
I just had never thought of facade as roof.
And the facade is only on the 1,500, right, square foot building?
That's that bonus. So if you want to go larger than 1,200, and you can do that, and you can match with like materials of your home and meet that front yard setback, then you come in, apply for a permit, staff reviews it, and gives you the permit.
But pods are only on the property for 60 days and then they gotta be off the property. They
Yes.
can't put a pod behind their house as a storage shed.
No.
Okay.
Are there any abilities for the property owner to get that extended in the event that they're doing construction or something?
If it's parked on a hard surface and they're ongoing construction and they have a permit, I don't think we're gonna go in and say 60 days is up. We're gonna work with them.
Now, if somebody wanted to buy several acres of land and build storage container homes, as long as it's all done on that acreage of land,
Well, it can even be, say, you're infilling a home and you wanna make a storage home for a house. And go through all the proper channels and get a building permit and meet building codes, you can do that. What this before you tonight is just saying, restricting it as an accessory structure. So a shed or storage behind the home. If someone may wanna do a commercial development like you have seen around out of storage containers, they can do it. We're not restricting that. We're proposing to restrict that.
Kinda like taking a refrigerator box and making a playhouse out of it. Okay.
You lost.
What, you've never
Yeah,
done that?
No, I did, but I lost the comparison.
Well, you paint it, you cut windows and put curtains, you know.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I've never had a dollhouse, I'm sorry.
Gentlemen, do we have more questions, concerns?
I'm good.
Do we like it as written?
What?
Do we like it as written?
Well, that's my next question. Are we okay with it as written?
I am. I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
then
fine.
I would entertain a motion.
With the first one,
Yeah, the first one takes care of all of it.
as written.
Yes.
Number, please.
G 1298.
Oh, I can't read my writing. I move to approve zoning ordinance amendments to revise residential accessory structure regulations, prohibit shipping containers as residential accessory structures, regulate infill housing sizes, and amend the planning commission bylaws as presented, and that ordinance number G 1298 be approved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, roll call?
Commissioner Badway?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilkinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Guthrie?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the cereal malt beverage municipal code amendment.
Madam Vice Mayor and Commission, the state of Kansas has changed the cereal malt beverage law effective April 1st, 2019, to allow cereal malt beverage up to 6% alcohol by volume. So the grocery stores, gas stations, and places like Pizza Hut will be allowed to serve beer up to 6%. Nothing else has changed, it's just that amount of alcohol by volume. We have provided an amended ordinance, the attorney has reviewed and is okay with it. We're essentially just replacing everywhere in our ordinance that it used to say cereal malt beverages, it now says beer or cereal malt beverage.
And that takes effect April 1.
Takes effect April 1st. I'm sorry, I did make one other change to comply with state law. We had general retailer and limited retailer in there, and they're now using off-premise retailer and on-premise retailer in place of those. So just a change in terminology. But fix that. Any questions?
Questions? Entertain a motion?
Madam Vice Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number G 1299.
Yes.
An ordinance amending the City of El Dorado, Kansas Municipal Code Sections 4.04.010 and 4.08 as it pertains to the sale of malt or cereal malt beverages.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, roll call?
Vice Mayor Wilkinson,
Yes?
Commissioner Guthrie,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Badway.
Yes.
Okay, now we'll move on to the municipal court municipal code amendment.
Madam Vice Mayor and Commission, the municipal court judge has requested an amendment to the municipal code regarding the failure to appear. And so that information is provided in the ordinance. It says that any person charged with a violation of any section of the code of the City of El Dorado, which constitutes a misdemeanor or an infraction, who commits any of the following acts is guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction shall be punished by a fine of not more than $500 or by imprisonment for more than 6 months, or by both such fine and imprisonment. So, If they fail to appear in court at the designated time, and the rest is listed that I'm not going to read because, I'm hoping that you have already read them. And it's long. We are also adding a piece on community service. Our insurance company, in order to comply with their regulations, are requiring that we offer some alternative to paying fines for people who cannot afford to do so. And community service is the alternative that they have requested. So we were actually already doing this a little bit from what I understand, but now it's just going to be official. So for every 1 hour of community service completed that can be verified, the defendant shall receive $8 credit towards municipal court fines. Community service has to be done in or for a business entity or organization in the city of El Dorado. And community service will not apply to court costs or restitution. Any questions?
Does the municipal court handle the community service? I mean, are they,
Kurt, that's Ryan, right?
I mean, I'm going to assume that you just don't go out and say, oh, I did 15 hours.
Yeah, we haven't done a lot of it. The court can order that, and we've also got a probation officer that can probably set that up, so,
I believe he's doing it now.
yeah. I think it's something they're just starting.
But they have to bring a chit back or something that
Yeah,
signs saying they,
It's gotta be verified,
right.
so.
But I got a question. So, community service has to be done in or for a business entity?
A business or organization in a.
Why a business entity?
Just the way they wrote it. I mean,
Who wrote it? The insurance company?
no, an attorney, our attorney.
I don't understand why you would tell someone that they go, okay, if you go over to this business and clean their windows, what's community service about that?
Nursing home. That's a
Well, I
business.
know, okay, if they went to a nursing home, that's one thing, but this just says a business entity. I mean, they could go hit every store up on Main Street and say, hey, I'll clean your windows, and
Right.
I don't think,
that just doesn't make sense to me.
am I wrong in saying that they don't, they have to approve the community service with Ryan before they do it? Like, he has to tell them what they can or can't do.
I think that's correct,
So
so.
then I think it ought to be in here.
Yeah, with the approval.
With the
of
approval
monitoring.
of authority having jurisdiction or whatever.
To me, I think they should work for the Parks and Rec.
Well, yeah,
And-
that was my next question. If it's municipal court,
Then
then
they
why
should
can't they do their, community service for the city?
They can. That's been done over the years.
Can we require that it be done for the city?
Yeah.
Mowing the cemeteries,
I mean, we could write it any way you want, and then however it's written is how we would manage
And I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just saying, they're failing to appear in our municipal court, so shouldn't the community service be done for the municipality?
I believe that we fall under organization. So if we didn't have something available, for example, if we didn't have someone to, because this has to be monitored, we don't just send them out and say, pick up trash in the park. Somebody's gotta be with them or watching them.
Somebody has to go out and be with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so,
Well, you know, nobody's gonna, if they go to a business and nobody's gonna stand there and watch them wash windows.
well, that's why we're asking that it be verified. So, I mean, somebody from that business would have to be willing to step up and verify that.
I think the easy answer is going to be that the first point is every hour will be worth $8, and then we can do community service. And then what we do is the city can work with the municipal judge and the prosecutor to determine what's community service, how's it gonna be overseen, how's it gonna be managed, and implement it that way. We wouldn't necessarily have to do all that by ordinance.
As long as some authority having jurisdiction with the city has a say of what constitutes community service, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But when I read this and it says, has to be done in or for a business entity, well, that's anybody, that's anything.
Well, then if you want, we can take this back and rework it and come back with some better language.
Well,
I mean, I think we can.
I mean, that's me, I mean, the rest of the commission may not have a problem with it, it may just be me. But,
Well, I see the monitoring of a business. You know, who's gonna do that?
nobody. They're gonna say, go wash those windows, and they'll come back an hour later and say, okay, I'm done, and, okay, here, let me sign your deal. They got your windows washed for free.
Was this what the insurance company wrote up? Or is this what we wrote?
Or you said an attorney wrote it.
I got this from the municipal court, and I think this is their current policy. I don't know if you guys have it written.
Probably not.
I think we can tighten it up a bit, if that's what you want, we can tighten it
I
up.
think I'd like to see it, I think I'd like to see it fleshed out a little bit, maybe some, I mean, even if we do it now and then do an amendment later to it, I'm okay with that, to get the ball rolling. But I think I'd like to see it fleshed out a little bit more, as in, you know, a little bit deeper
Another-
detail.
Another piece of that is we've had offenders that have been on our books for years
Yeah.
that can't afford it. I mean,
No, this is a great,
Yeah,
this
so-
is another
No,
tool in your
no,
toolbox.
this is a great idea, I'm all
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
that.
I think what I would
I'm
prefer
not
to
for
do,
doing it if we've gotta have a city employee stand there and watch them.
I think there's ways to manage it. I think what I'd recommend doing is tabling it, and we can bring it back at the next meeting.
flush it out.
I mean, a couple weeks, it's not gonna be
Okay.
that big of a deal. We'll get the language tweaked, and then we'll bring it back, and we'll be ready to rock and roll.
Right, I didn't mean to.
No, no, no,
About it.
and I agree
It
with you,
just-
it's.
It didn't make any sense to me.
I mean, I'm more towards having you guys look at it and get it a little bit more black and white.
So, not to further cloud the issue, but I wanna bring up the $8, since we will be tweaking it a little bit. And I don't know what the court's thought on $8 was. Does the commission have any druthers to, where I'm going with that is, if we bench it to like minimum wage, for example, we won't have to come back and modify the ordinance every time we wanna change it, it'll automatically,
I'm fair with a nice round number.
okay, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
I like a
Oh,
nice round number.
That's,
We'll just have to remember to come back and change it at some point in the future if. and
What
when-
is minimum wage right now?
75?
775.
75, I think.
$8 is fine.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to benchmark it to minimum wage, we would just write that in there, and then we wouldn't have to remember to come back. If minimum wage was $15, for example, we wouldn't have to come back and do that.
is there anything that says it has to be minimum wage?
No, I don't think that there's
Okay,
anything that
then let's
requires
go
it.
$8.
I like the round 8 number, I
Yeah.
like the round number.
Okay, I just wanted to check before we took it and tweaked it.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Can I get a motion to table, please?
Do what?
Can I have a motion to table it, please?
I will entertain a motion to
I
table.
move to table the municipal court municipal code amendment.
Second.
Does that need to be a roll call?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Approval of the industrial park master plan.
At the last work session, we reviewed the industrial park master plan. This plan was initiated by El Dorado Inc. and the city of El Dorado to better understand the acreage both the city and El Dorado Inc. owns on the west side of the Kansas Turnpike, and to help us have an understanding of that asset. So the plan started off with an Alta survey, so we could understand the boundaries, all the encumbrances on that property, subject title work, and understand what areas we had available to build, how we could market those properties. We also needed to have a deeper understanding of what is the ability of the city to serve it with water and sanitary sewer, an approximate idea of those costs, and the capability and capacity that we have to be able to do that. The other big part of it was to understand the road network and how these parcels would be served via road, along with rail. And the goal of all this was to have what we coined early on was to be answer ready. So when a prospect, we get a request from a prospect that's looking for a 100-acre parcel that has these certain requirements, we're able to respond in a quick manner and understand what we have. So tonight, we're asking you to consider accepting that industrial park master plan. The cost of this plan was split between El Dorado Inc. and the city of El Dorado, with the city's share being $40,650.
You looking for a motion?
Are we happy with it?
That was just gonna be my question.
I mean, because it, now that I understand it better from the last meeting, I mean, it's in your guys' hands. It's gonna be your tool.
Yes, and this is different than other master plans some of you all have been involved in, like the airport master plan or the park and recreation master plan, which had strategies and objectives and achievable goals for you all as a group to work towards. This plan is more informational based. This kind of gives us a plan for the future. When this happens, this needs to happen, and this and this. So of course, El Dorado is fortunate enough to land a prospect. We have an idea of those infrastructure utility costs up front, so negotiations with prospects are a lot easier.
And we can negotiate knowledgeably with them.
Knowledgeably, instead of, yeah, and the big thing, in El Dorado Inc. will get a request from a prospect or request from the Department of Commerce to respond within 4 days. Do you have any sites available? And it's been a scramble to kind of understand, does this fit?
And do you have this and this and this and this and this and this?
So things we learned with the property we had out there. Of course, West El Dorado has a long history of being oil production. So there is a lot of encumbrances on these properties, old blanket easements that are no longer in effect past utilities or power companies. And through this helps us clean these up and get these properties in a better state to be able to transfer ownership in a faster nature.
As Scott mentioned, there's not specific goals to obtain. This plan doesn't delineate you need to do X, Y, and Z by a certain date. But it does set forth certain things that we do need to do. So we do need to address the encumbrances and some of the other things that are outlying, some of which we can do now, some of which we don't have to do unless there's a development opportunity that's coming our way. But it provides us really with the game plan for what we will need to do in the event that someone is interested in that acreage. We don't have the specific answers, we have the ballpark answers. And that's what we're talking about is getting in the ballpark so we can move forward and get to where we then can respond intelligently to these prospects. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to say, well, we think it will cost $3 million to develop out there, and then you find out it's actually going to cost 12, and then that's going to crush your deal. So we're pretty comfortable with what the information we have. It provides us with ranges. It provides us with the ballpark figures that we really need to understand what those development prospects, what it's going to take to develop the land. And then it also includes things that are going to be beneficial, like can we serve it with rail? That was always a question that we wanted to know. And so now we have that information. We know generally what a configuration or two might look like to serve that with rail. So those are useful information so that if a prospect does come in and they want to have rail access, we can tell them this site might work for you or this site might work a little better for you. So yes, the answer is yes. I think we're good with where we're at right now.
Was there any major surprises or something that surprised you in the negative way? Like you thought, well, yeah, we have this, and then we realized, no, we don't.
In rail was a big one, so what we learned, I guess going into it, we always assumed, well, you can spur off the Union Pacific and we'll be golden and there'll be rail served. We learned through this process, the Union Pacific, although not a standard, requested that El Dorado always have a west-facing switch. So they would always drop cars as they were leaving El Dorado. You know, we assumed, you know, they would pull in from the east. And so things like that happened. Things that brought, in this plan, that brought a little attention to some other areas that we need to look at. So we need to look overall the capacity of our sewer collection system in El Dorado. And so that kind of told us a lot more of that. We know we have the ability to serve 1 million gallons of water a day west of the turnpike and meet a 1,500 gallon per minute fire flow requirement today. It's just extending those pipes under the turnpike. The other thing with this, it got us talking to a lot of folks. It got us face to face with Kansas Turnpike and KDOT, Kansas Gas, Westar, all of these folks that we generally have communication with, but it was more specific. It was more specific on this site. And we've heard from Union Pacific now, they're interested in kind of playing off this plan and marketing that rail industrial lead line from Wichita to El Dorado and using some of this information to help market Union Pacific itself. Kansas Turnpike is looking at doing a conceptual design study of what a west interchange in El Dorado may look like in the future. They were able to understand the assets we have out there and decided, you know what, we probably need to start looking at this. We need to look at this with 254 and how that attaches to 135 and how that traffic will be coming on and on. So I think generally it was good to go through the process and understanding what we have today, so we can not make decisions in our future that maybe aren't the best, you know, unintentional decisions that we didn't understand the full consequences.
You ready? I move to accept the industrial park master plan.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now we move on to City Commission and Advisory Board updates. Commissioner Badway.
I don't have anything, and I'm not on an advisory board anymore, so.
Commissioner Lewis.
I don't have anything right now.
Commissioner Guthrie.
No, I'm good.
No.
Oh, get your list.
I had to write a note just so I would remember. I have been asked by several very interested people wanting to know if there was any chance that when we build the tennis courts up north, that we can mark them for pickleball.
Well, we've had some conversations about a multi-use painting of the tennis court. It is something that we should consult with USD 490 on before we do it. I don't know if Keisha has specific requirements for Keisha-related events. So one of the goals of the 8-court complex was so that USD 490 could potentially host regional tennis tournaments. where that becomes a conflict is if you have a tennis court and then a pickleball court painted on top of that. Participants in a Acacia tournament, or any tournament for that matter, could become confused by pickleball lines, and now you have an issue. I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just saying that we should probably consult with our partner on it first, and go from there.
Okay. So
If there are no Acacia requirements, I don't necessarily see a problem with doing it, but we should consult with Acacia.
What exactly is pickleball?
So pickleball is kind of like, the best explanation I give you is that it is kind of like handball mixed with tennis, mixed with, badminton. So you play, with paddles, but it's more of a slower paced game, a smaller court, lower net, and so you can play it and not have to be as agile.
Lower
as-
than a tennis?
I believe the net is actually lower than a
Yeah.
tennis.
So you're not just talking about different lines, you're talking about lowering the net?
Well, then a net that will lower, yeah.
Right.
Now, I understand we have pickleball courts out at the activity center.
Yes, they bring on nets and set them up. I believe they can do 3 pickleball courts out there. They use Gym 3 primarily, and which generally works pretty well, except during the basketball season, they have less court time. And so I do know that Kevin's received some input from the pickleball players that they'd like to see more opportunities to play pickleball during basketball season, but unfortunately, we only have so many courts, so we try to accommodate them as best we can. But we don't have any outdoor pickleball courts.
Wasn't Great Life gonna do pickleball?
They have expressed some interest in doing that, but they have to obviously get in and get that all set up before they get their tennis/pickleball courts set up, so.
Okay, well, I did what I was asked to do.
Okay.
So it's up to Keisha to decide really.
Well, yeah, we'll check with 490 and see.
That's all I have.
The only couple things that I have, you probably have noticed that Gordy and Central, we've got asphalt on top of it, so you can drive, you can park. We're pretty much done with that project, except we're gonna go in and finish the striping and get all that taken care of, and then that project will be pretty much completed for all intents and purposes. First and Second Avenue drainage, that one is also pretty much completed. I believe we have to do some cleanup of sorts, but the infrastructure's in the ground, and we're kind of waiting for that first rainstorm so we can kind of see how it works. But it should mediate some of the problems that come from quick rains in that area. And then I did want to report very briefly on the Parade Trails transition. They have kind of moved in and are kind of starting to get the place set up the way they'd like it. They have been operating under the lease. We haven't actually closed the real estate transaction yet. I spoke with Ryan Minnis last week, and he wasn't quite sure what was holding up the closing. Everything's done on our end, so we're kind of waiting on them to get that completed. But they have offered, and all of our employees have accepted offers of employment, so they are all working out at Prairie Trails, and so you'll see them out there this summer. And they're currently ready for business. Phone number is still the same. Much of that will still remain the same because they don't want to change the identity of the brand. So if you know of someone that's trying to get a hold of the golf course, same number, so they can do that all right now.
Gentlemen, anything else? I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?